Well, hello and welcome back to DIY My Way. I've had the Polaris Ranger EV for about 5 months now, and I think I'm in a good position to give you a full review on its capabilities and the pros and cons. So if you've been considering an electric ATV, particularly the Polaris Ranger EV, then this is the video for you. The best way to evaluate the Ranger EV is to compare it to models with similar specs, which are the popular Ranger 570 and the Ranger 500. I'm using Polaris's comparison tool on their website. Let's zoom in for a closer look at the key differences. Right off the bat, you can see you pay a premium for electric, with the EV costing $1,700 more than the 570 and $3,000 more than the 500. These are the base MSRP prices. So you really have to value the advantages of the electric drive for the EV to be worth the premium price. My wife and I do value those advantages, and I'll cover them, along with the disadvantages, later in the video. The Ranger EV has a 48-volt high-efficiency AC induction motor compared to the 4-stroke single-cylinder gasoline engines in the 570 and 500. The electric motor is rated for 35 horsepower in the comparison, but this is wrong. It's actually 30 horsepower, which is 14 less than the 570 and 2 horsepower less than the 500. Even so, I found it has plenty of power for my needs. In fact, it has the same load and towing capacities as the 570 and 500. All three models have the same drive system, which I'll cover in detail shortly. The EV is powered by 8 deep-cycle lead-acid batteries, and the transmission and final drive for the EV is direct drive with low-noise gears, compared with the automatic Polaris variable transmission of the 570 and the 500. The PVT is Polaris's version of a continuous variable transmission commonly found in UTVs. You'll get to see and hear more of the EV transmission later in this video. The dimensions and capacities of the models are identical, with the exception of the vehicle weight, where the EV weighs 689 pounds more than the 570 and 697 pounds more than the 500. This is due to the weight of the batteries. One curious but not significant difference is the EV's wheelbase is 1 inch less than the 570 and 500. The extra weight of the batteries gives the EV a low center of gravity for very good stability. The EV does not have the option of electronic power steering like the 570 and 500, but I found the manual steering is not a problem. Another interesting difference is the size of the tires. The EV has 25 by 9 by 12 Carlisle all-trail tires front and rear compared to the 25 by 8 by 12 front and 25 by 10 by 12 rear for the 570 and 500. They all have stamped steel wheels, McPherson strut front suspension, and dual A-arm independent rear suspension. All three have 4-wheel hydraulic disc brakes, but the EV has the additional note that it has dual-bore front and rear calipers. Also, the EV has a hand-activated parking brake rather than a parking position on the gear shift. The Ranger EV is available in 2 color schemes, Avalanche Gray, like mine, or Pursuit Camo.
So why electric and why Polaris?
This right here is one of the main reasons we went with an electric UTV. It's quiet. One of the nice things is when you stop, you just want to take it in. No engine sounds, no anything, it's just quiet. And we really love that about this thing.
Also, another major consideration was the low maintenance that electric vehicles require. And I'll go over the maintenance that this vehicle does require later in the video. Also, another consideration was that electric vehicles are friendlier to the environment. And that was a consideration, but not the major one. The quiet ride was the primary objective. So why did we pick the Polaris Ranger EV? Well, the big reason was it's been around for quite a while. It first came out in 2010, so it has about 10 years of development behind it. Also, the ratings on it were very good. Looking way back from when it first came out up through today, the folks that buy them, that know that they want an electric vehicle and understand the benefits and the limitations of them, are very pleased with them. Now, you can buy golf carts and similar type vehicles all day long from a lot of different vendors, but there are not many UTVs that are electric. I believe there may be two other brands that I'm aware of that actually make a UTV. And I decided to go with Pioneer in them that's been at it 10 years and been at it the longest, as far as I know. Now, if Polaris had made a 4-seater version of the Ranger EV, we'd have certainly considered it, because it'd be nice to take guests around the property. But they don't, and it doesn't look like they have any plans to do so. We considered getting a golf cart or something like that, but I was afraid it wasn't going to do well with the terrain that we do have, which has some fairly steep hills and fairly bumpy in places. Also, I wanted something that could actually do some work, and this thing can do that, as you'll see later in the video.
Now for a closer look at the Ranger EV features. The dashboard is essentially the same as the 570, but with very different instrumentation, which you'll see up close shortly. It has driver and passenger cup holders, 3 storage areas, and a glove box. Also, the Ranger EV has a full range tilt steering wheel. The seats have independent bottom cushions for the driver and passenger, but a common bench-style back cushion. Both seats flip open for access to storage trays. I keep the charging extension cord on the passenger side. By the way, the EV does not come with an extension cord. You will have to provide your own. The trays are removable for access to the batteries and are held in place with Velcro strips. Under the driver's seat, I keep a pair of gloves and some lock and ride tie downs for the cargo box. Again, the tray is removable for battery access. Looking at the front, the Ranger EV is equipped with a brush guard bumper, a brush guard plate, mud guards, and McPherson strut front suspension. There's even a winch mount for an optional 4,500-pound winch. Looking at the rear, you'll find the 30 horsepower AC induction motor. Notice I said AC and not DC. That's because the 8 12-volt batteries are wired to provide 48 volts DC, which is then converted to AC so the motor can be brushless, which makes it essentially maintenance-free. The rear differential is lockable when you need extra traction. Here's the dual A-arm independent rear suspension. And there's also a 2-inch hitch receiver.
The dump bed on the Ranger EV is like the other Ranger models, plastic, but it's a very thick plastic. And it also has this dump assist cylinder. So with this handle, it helps you dump your load.
The tailgate is easy to operate with simple but secure latches that have holes for a wire lock safety pin if desired. When you first turn the ignition key on, the display briefly shows the runtime hours. Then the battery charge level. By the way, the manual says to avoid letting the charge get below 20%. Below the LCD display are a set of indicators including forward, neutral, reverse, parking brake, the electrical system error, which is also used to indicate that I've done something stupid like push the accelerator with the parking brake on. The one you don't want to see is this one, which indicates the motor is overheated. Not to worry though, if the motor does get hot, the system automatically reduces power to the motor to avoid overheating. If it does get overheated, the system won't run at all until the motor is cooled down. Fortunately, I've never seen that one come on. The other controls on the dashboard include the direction selector for forward, neutral, and reverse. We'll leave it in neutral for now. This is the drive switch, which is currently in one-wheel drive or turf mode. To my surprise, this works great 90% of the time on our property, so it usually stays in this mode. The center position is rear two-wheel drive with locked differential. Use this only if you lose traction on a muddy trail and only engage when the rear wheel is not spinning. You don't want to forget to leave it in this mode when driving on concrete or asphalt. It will cause excess wear on the drivetrain and your rear tires. The top position is automatic all-wheel drive, which means it will automatically switch from rear-wheel drive to the all-wheel drive anytime the rear wheels lose traction. When the rear wheels regain traction, the front gear case will automatically disengage. The speed range switch provides low, medium, and high ranges. The low range setting has a maximum speed of 10 miles per hour, but provides the most torque for towing, hauling loads, driving on steep hills, or aggressive terrain. I have found this to be ideal for our property, allowing us to go slow yet easily climb the steepest hills with minimum drain on the batteries. The medium range has a maximum speed of 15 miles per hour and is recommended for maximum range, which by the way the manual says is 50 miles, but I'm sure that's on flat paved roads. However, I've noticed the battery level declines noticeably faster on the open road at higher speeds. The high range has a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour, and the manual says this range is best for trail riding. This may be true for flat, smooth trails, but it certainly is not the best for the trails on our property. This switch turns on the headlights, which have two 50-watt halogen bulbs. Here's an idea of how well they light up the landscape. The video doesn't really do them justice. They're actually quite bright and fine for night driving. And this is the charge status indicator. Fast flashing green means the batteries are less than 80% charged. Slow flashing green means they are more than 80% charged. And a solid green light means they are fully charged and the charger is in maintenance mode. The hood is made of plastic and opens by releasing the rubber straps on either side. Under the hood you'll find the charger cord, the charger, the fuse box, a 10 amp terminal block for 12 volt accessories, and the brake fluid reservoir. Charging is simple. Just plug in a 14 gauge or heavier extension cord into the charging cord, and plug the extension cord into an outlet. The manual says it takes about 8 hours to fully charge the batteries. I typically plug it in at the end of the day and it's fully charged by next morning. However, I've not discharged the batteries more than 80% so far. By the way, due to the potential buildup of explosive gases, I don't charge it in the shop unless I have the windows open and the shop gable fan on. Most often I just pull it under the shed off the back of my garage and charge it there.
Just like its gas-powered cousins, the Ranger EV has a 2-inch trailer receiver hitch. The one problem that I see with it is it sits pretty low. So my solution to that is to flip the ball around on one of these standard hitches so that it sits up a little bit higher. So the question is, will it tow anything? You're about to find out.
Yes, it can. It has a towing capacity of 1,500 pounds, and while I wouldn't try to tow a load of gravel up hill with it, it will easily tow building materials, ladders, and tools up hills. And what about street performance? Well, it's not really street legal, but out here in the country you can get away with the occasional sightseeing drive at up to 25 miles an hour. My wife and I enjoy the occasional road trip on the gravel roads near our home.
So the number one maintenance procedure you have with a Ranger EV is maintaining the battery electrolyte levels. And you do that with distilled water.
You top off the batteries the same way you would with any lead-acid battery, adding distilled water as needed to each cell. The locking battery caps are convenient.
Popping off the batteries is not a big deal, but it is aggravating when I have to remove these panels from either side on the back here to access all the batteries.
But not too aggravating. Each panel has 6 plastic fasteners to remove. A flashlight helps me see the battery acid level. I check the battery level frequently, but I've only had to top them off twice in 5 months, and it takes about a gallon of distilled water. So let's cover some of the pros and cons of the Ranger EV, starting with the pros. At the top of the list is its quiet ride. The low noise combined with the ability to navigate tough terrain has made it popular with hunters. That quiet operation makes it easy to have conversations without having to talk loudly or shout. It requires much less maintenance than gas-powered Rangers. And of course, it's kind to the environment. On the con side, it's more expensive than the comparable gas-powered Rangers. It has limited range compared to the gas-powered Rangers that can carry extra gas with them. Refueling a gas-powered Ranger takes minutes. Recharging the EV takes hours. With a top speed of 25 miles an hour, it is slower than the gas-powered Rangers, which can go over 40 miles an hour. Finally, it's not well suited for cold climates. The lead-acid batteries cannot put out as much power in cold weather as they can in warmer climates. In fact, the manual says that the EV will not operate if the battery temperature is below 14 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 10 Celsius. Not surprisingly, the EV is most popular in temperate climates like the West Coast and the South. It rarely gets that cold here in Georgia, and when it does, I'll be staying inside, so it's no problem for me. If you think the Ranger EV might be a good fit for you, I recommend downloading the manual from the Polaris website. Read it carefully to understand all the capabilities and limitations. I have a link to it in the video description.
So if you've been considering an electric UTV, I hope this video has been helpful in letting you decide whether an electric UTV is right for you. The quiet ride was a must for us, the low maintenance is great, and of course, since it helps the environment out, that's another plus too. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to give it a like, leave a comment, and by all means, please subscribe. And if you want to know when I post new videos, click that little bell. And as always, thank you for watching.